Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Adrienne DeLorco with Yoga for Migraine, and we're going to be answering some really important questions on how to consistently exercise more with migraine. Why should increasing physical activity be a top priority for your migraine management? How to exercise more if you are feeling crappy with migraine so much of the time, and what do you do if exercise triggers an attack? And we are so thrilled and blessed to have our guest expert today, Dr. Madison Oak. Dr. Madison Oak is a vestibular physical therapist, owner of Oak Physical Therapy and Wellness. She's the founder of Vestibular Group Fit, which is an awesome membership program to help people with vestibular disorders exercise more, just like what we're talking about today. Dr. Madison strives to help those with vestibular migraine and other vestibular disorders decrease their dizziness, improve physical strength, and enhance their understanding of the vestibular system. And you can learn more about her Vestibular Group Fit and vestibular migraine. She has an amazing Instagram channel too, and she's at the Vertigo Doctor on Facebook, and I think it's just at Vertigo Doctor on
Everywhere. I think on Twitter
Okay.
it's shortened, but you've got it. Yeah, that
All
was
right.
a killer introduction.
Oh, well, we're so
Nice.
happy to have you and to be able to share really key information that so many people also with vestibular, have to deal with in particular about how to exercise without feeling dizzy and overwhelmed. So thank you so much
Yeah,
for joining us today.
absolutely. Thank you
And
for having me.
we have these talks every Wednesday in the Migraine Yoga for Migraine Facebook group at 2 p.m. Eastern. I either talk about important issues, wellness issues for migraine, like exercise, or we do a free Yoga for Migraine class. So I want to start, Madison, with how do you help your clients begin to exercise more safely, more consistently, and have more physical activity? We know that exercise really is one of the leading non-pharmaceutical preventives for migraine. It can be as effective as topiramate, one of the leading preventives, but there's no side effects. There's only positive side effects like improved sleep, it boosts our mood, it decreases stress, improves our migraine resilience, and helps to decrease our migraine symptoms. So why should we do this, and how do you do it with the clients that you work with vestibular migraine?
Absolutely. So I work with people of all kinds of vestibular disorders, but definitely the most common person that I work with are people with vestibular migraine. And so I really try my best to go down the rabbit hole of research of like what is really going to help these people. And I think that a lot of it really comes down to consistency, which we know helps sleep and all these other things. It gives you a ton of benefits of positive hormones and XYZ if you can look at the research, but it's a really hard thing to do. So it's a great question of how I get my patients either in vestibular therapy or in vestibular group fit, which is my group program, which is how I help like more people at once, basically, because I can only do so much VRT in a week. And consistency and baby steps, I would say, are definitely the two leading most helpful things for people with any sort of migraine wanting to get back to exercise. So it's definitely not an easy thing, but starting with literally 2 minutes a day of walking. Like I have a patient who walks for 2 minutes a day and she's working her way up, and it's been great for her. It helps her sleep, it helps her feel less fatigued overall in the long term, things like that. And so I think really kind of like we were talking about before we started recording is just starting everything really, really small and quitting while you're ahead. So if you feel like, okay, today is a good day for me to start exercising, or I'm going to start tomorrow, I wouldn't start mid attack if you're not a person who already exercises. Like that's not a good time to start. But some people do find that exercising and like even going for a small walk, doing a recumbent bike, something like that, something easy, can actually fend off a migraine, especially if it's in the prodrome phase. I don't recommend anything with like a lot of bending forward or jumping. If you're mid attack, those are things that you can do in your exercise routine to help prevent attacks. But what I was saying about quitting while you're ahead really is not like if you're like, okay, I'm having a good day. I'm going to start today. I'm going to go on a walk. I used to be able to walk a 5K. Was easy for me. I could do it pre-migraine diagnosis or pre-being chronic, something like that. I used to be able to do that. Don't start with the 5K. Start with literally half a kilometer. I don't know what that is in miles. I should, but start really, really small. Maybe walk around your house for 3 minutes. Go outside because vitamin D and fresh air can really have a positive benefit. So as long as it's safe to walk, I know it's icy right now for some people. Walk around your neighborhood, do 1 block, come inside, see how you feel, and see how you do the next day. Um, it can be
Yeah,
really
and
hard.
I'll jump in there too, Madison. These are just huge, amazing tips. And if you're just joining
Yeah.
us, we're here talking about how to increase your physical activity with migraine, how to be more consistent with it. And I'm joined with Dr. Madison Oak, who specializes in vestibular migraine and is a vestibular physical therapist. If you're joining us live, drop hashtag live in the comments or hashtag replay if you're joining us in the replay. And we will be able to take some questions. We've got some pre-submitted, and then we'll see if we have time for people joining us live. But that point about, so many people with migraine, remember the days when they used to be more physically active. And so there's a bit of, this like grief that sometimes we feel like we can't do what we used to do. And so if we don't, meet those expectations for ourselves of what we used to be able to do, we're like a failure. And I think shifting our mindset of what you said, that you have to start with something and start small, and to really celebrate those actions, and not mitigate, how you're taking action to improve your health and build your resilience to have, it's like one of those virtuous cycles where once you're able to be physically active, your migraine attacks do lessen and you can be more physically active. But if you're just like coming out, from the right as fast as you can with all this, you're gonna set yourself back instead of forward.
Totally agree. I totally agree with that. I think that's such an important point. And what you said about like feeling frustrated with what you used to be able to do and not it can't necessarily do to the same level anymore. Like taking it slow for that exact reason is so important. And I think that's such an excellent point. I had something else to say on that. I'll think of it.
Yeah. Well, so for people, that you work with, how do you help them on the days where they are having a higher pain day, or maybe feel like exercise is just so out of the question?
Yeah, so I of course have patients like this in this situation. And I think, again, going back to starting small and not starting the first time on a really high pain day, right? There are probably not any like zero pain days for this person, but there are days that are lower in pain or higher in pain. So the days that are lower and feel more manageable, that's a better time to introduce something like movement, exercise, etc., than it is to introduce on a high pain day. That being said, if you've introduced it before on a lower pain day and you say, okay, you know what, that actually made me feel better. It made me feel more focused or more calm. The result doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I have no more pain, right? The result can be any positive thing. I slept better tonight, or I feel again like I'm more focused, or I can do better at work. Then you can start to introduce those things on a higher pain day or when you're having an attack or something like that, to see if that can help shorten the attack or make it feel more manageable. So start when it feels easier and then introduce it again when it feels more difficult on a level that you've done before.
Yeah, and something we do in Beyond Migraine, my group coaching program that focuses on incorporating yoga into your daily life, is almost for my clients, what's more important is actually creating this space to have physical activity in your day and building that daily habit more than what the exercise is.
Yes.
That can come later, but when you are making this daily time for yourself, and making it a habit, that's like the first thing. That's the first muscle that you're trying to grow, is that habit, because the consistency is what so many of us with migraine struggle with, because when you have an attack or having a hard day, it can feel so easy to give up and not do anything. So
Absolutely.
for what we do is really starting with that 2 or 5 minutes, right? And that can
Yeah.
be just going around the block and that
Hmm.
being valuable in and of itself.
Yes.
And trying to start with something that you could do even on your highest pain day, which I know sometimes
Hmm.
things can be bad. But even like with yoga, you can do some yoga poses in your
Hmm.
bed. You can focus on your breath. What is
Absolutely.
essential, I think, probably for what both of us do is that we, as people with migraine, can feel free and give ourselves permission to adjust the level of intensity of our physical activity depending on how we feel that day.
Yes, I totally agree. And back to what you said about the habit, I want to put like one plug for habits. If you can attach this new habit, if it's 1 minute or 2 minutes to an old habit, like I brush my teeth and stand on one leg at the same time. I know that's not the same as trying to start an exercise routine, but if you can attach this new habit with an old habit, that's a lot easier than trying to create this whole new space. So I would
Exactly.
try and think of something throughout your day that you're like, you know what, I could like extend this thing or move this thing around, but attach it together. I think that's really helpful in starting a new exercise routine.
Yeah, doing this habit stacking with
Yes.
teeny tiny micro habits is so helpful. And
Mhm.
what I think so many people with chronic pain can feel a little bit of relief to know is that exercise doesn't have to be done all in one shot to be effective, that you
Mhm.
can break it up and 2 minutes at a time is as effective as doing 20 minutes all in one
Yes.
time. So feel free to break things up, and that just getting out of your seat has every hour has its
Mhm.
own benefit. So
Absolutely.
let's go with some
Absolutely.
questions that were submitted ahead of time, and
Yes.
then maybe we'll also be able to get some of these great questions coming in the thread. Let's start with a question from Kate. So she knows, that physical activity is helpful for migraines long term, but she's struggling with exercising consistently without triggering one. Is she
Mhm.
supposed to exercise only until she feels an attack coming on and repeat this until she builds a tolerance to exercise? Is there some other way? How do we get to the point where exercise is helpful, where it is providing that preventative effect? Because
Mhm.
right now, just even doing walking and doing yoga is hard for her. And she
Mhm.
used to exercise 5 days a week, so there's also
Yeah.
that element of like, oh, but I used to.
Yeah.
That also,
Absolutely.
pulls on so many of us, including myself.
Totally. I think that kind of I want to first caveat all this and say it is really easy for me to sit here and talk to you like you should just start exercising every day. Just go ahead and do it. It'll be fine. Than it is to actually do in practice. There are so many barriers, whether it's pain or dizziness or having a busy life, having a job, kids, partners, whatever it is. Like there are a lot of barriers. And I want to first caveat what I'm about to say with I understand that.
It's hard.
It's hard. It is not, this is not an easy thing. But I really think that you said specifically, Kate, in this question, which is a really good point. Am I just supposed to do this until I find a migraine or I feel a migraine coming on? The answer is no. So kind of what I said before about quitting while you're ahead to build a tolerance rather than quitting when you feel a migraine to build a tolerance is a really big deal. So something more concrete like tearing a muscle, right? That's something that's like very obvious. I know like a migraine is obvious, but it's more invisible in tearing a muscle for whatever reason in the world that is. It drives me crazy, but it's easier to maybe think of it this way. If you are trying to strengthen a muscle so you can get back to running, let's say, and you've strained this muscle or torn this muscle somehow, you wouldn't strengthen the muscle until you tear it again or feel it tearing. You'd
Yeah.
strengthen it in a really like pain-free, comfortable range, and that range would slowly increase. So the same thing goes for migraine. You're going to strengthen that tolerance, that threshold to exercise outside of the migraine range, even if it's literally 1 minute, 2 minutes at a time, and building that threshold up.
I
There
love
used to
that
be,
analogy.
so yeah, that's my favorite one because it's more concrete, but it's still bizarre. Anyway, so I think it's also important to recognize exactly what you said a second ago about um, there's like you can do it in chunks. So there used to be research that said you needed to do 10 minutes at a time for it to count, but that's not true. So I want to first like myth bust that problem.
Love it.
And then I want to state that literally, if you need to do like 1 minute every hour of like calf raises, that counts. If you want to walk around your house one time, 3 times a day, that counts. And that's a really good starting place because hopefully that won't trigger an attack. It won't make something feel worse, but it will be able to tell your body, hey, we're going to start moving again. I'm going to be really comfortable and safe about this. We don't need to trigger something that throws us into a panic or an attack.
Yeah, oh, I love that analogy of yeah, you're not going to exercise until you pull a muscle. You're going to be gentle with yourself. And
Totally.
yeah, for me to add on to that,
Mhm.
I suggest that people with migraine give any new movement, whether that's yoga or, something more cardio, like give it your 50% effort when you're first starting out. Like you don't want to push to your max, even though in standard exercise medicine, that's kind of what people do. They go to the gym and they're encouraged to just keep pushing, and max out, their muscle use. And for those of us with migraine, especially if you're getting back to exercise and it's been a while, give it like half your effort.
Mhm.
And then as you build the consistency, you can increase your effort and intensity so that you're doing it in a way that feels safe, that's not triggering, and that you're also not experiencing that fear of like, oh my gosh, am I going too far? Am I not? Like, how would just not go that far? Just like
Yeah,
let
just
it be
don't.
enjoyable.
Yeah, it should be comfortable. It should be happy. And like in my group where there's not a way for me to tell exactly every single person what to do at one time, right? I state at the beginning of all the workouts, if you're new around here, even if you're not new, if you're not having the best day, if you feel like, hey, today maybe I shouldn't go so hard, don't. Do one round of exercises. Do no weight, do them slowly, do half of the workout, something like that. And it should be comfortable for your body, and your body should leave feeling good, not feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have an attack now. That's
Yeah.
not how we want to leave.
And to address one of the comments that was left in our current live stream,
Mhm.
Chrissy asked, what do you do when you are chronic and constantly have a level of migraine? And I think we've talked a little bit about this, that you want to break it up, you want to make it small and not go beyond and
Mhm.
try to make this like solid exercise regime that you're set off to do, like this
Totally, totally.
little bit, like every hour, move for a
Hmm.
minute.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything on to that about, how someone with some daily migraine symptoms would
Yeah. I
maybe?
think that, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people, not everyone, obviously, with chronic migraine has better days and worse days. And the
Mhm.
days that are better, that's when you should start and kind of tell your body, okay, we're going to start doing this. And we're just going to walk once around the block, and that counts as my exercise. And that's a happy thing. And if that didn't make you trigger a worse attack, if that didn't make you feel worse, and maybe you either stayed neutral or got better, then you can try that again on a higher pain day or a day where you're just not feeling as good, and kind of use that scale as like a very personal scale to grade when and how and what kind of exercise you're going to be doing.
Yeah, great advice. And to add on from my yoga perspective,
Mhm.
um, you can adjust to what you do on those higher and lower pain days. So for us in yoga, you can make yoga as physically intense and a workout as you want, or
Mhm.
you can focus on your breath and do restorative yoga with props and just resting in poses.
Mhm.
So it's all about giving yourself that permission, like that you don't have to push through, that you can listen to your body and bring in some movement, and that can change for how you're feeling that day. It doesn't have to be the same type of thing every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that you said you can work on your breath. That counts.
Hmm.
That so counts.
I love that. That's gonna be the hashtag. That counts.
That counts.
There we go. Let's take another question from the current chat. Aaron asks, is HIIT even an option with migraine anymore? Ooh, do you have any
Oh, yes,
insight
it is.
into? So high intensity interval training is what HIIT
Mhm.
stands for, and
Uh-huh.
typically it's time, maybe a minute at a time, right? You're
Mhm.
kind of giving something your all, and then you kind of rest, and then you come back. But Madison, if you want to add more to it from your expert perspective
Yeah.
on physical therapy.
Yeah. So this is kind of why I created Vestibular Group Fit, because there just wasn't a way for people to exercise with any sort of vestibular or migraine disease to exercise comfortably. And whether that's a HIIT way, a heavy lifting thing, something that's like as many reps as possible, all of those things are featured in different ways that are designed exactly for people with migraine and vestibular disorders. So this morning in Group Fit was 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, and they're all recorded. So for that, for instance, we did like a heavy lifting day. And so that meant you find something that's heavy for you. So whether that is nothing at all, a soup can or an 8-pound weight or something even heavier, if that's your go-to, that is completely scaled to you. And then you're able to kind of grade like, okay, I just did that round, I felt good, or I just did that round, I didn't feel so good. Let's make that adjustment. So high intensity interval training can be so many things. It doesn't mean you have to jump up and down 150 times in a minute, which is what I feel like a lot of people who don't have a migraine or vestibular disorder go with. Like I do 150 jumping jacks, and then I do 15 jump squats, and then I do 25 burpees, and then I do whatever. And HIIT doesn't have to look like that. It can look like any sort of interval training that's high intensity for you. So if high intensity for you is breathing and marching while you're laying down with your legs, that is HIIT. If high intensity for you is a single squat jump, that counts. Anything like that counts. So yes, it's an option. It just means it needs to be scaled to your needs.
I love that. Yes, it's all about making adjustments for yourself. You don't need to plug yourself into some standard class at the gym that is, going to have lights and music and people pushing you to the max and, triggering a migraine attack. So I think it's such an important theme for those of us with migraine that we need to allow ourselves to have that permission to make adjustments. We don't have to avoid exercise.
Yeah.
We can do it with adjustments. Each day is different, our pain level is different, and we can modify. And so, yeah, HIIT is totally doable, which is, I didn't even realize that you can make it work for you. Just as myself living with migraine, I tend myself to do better with activities that are a little more like endurance based rather than like that intensity. For me, intensity can often trigger an attack later, but that I think is definitely something I could work on too, of doing it in a graded level, right? Of not just jumping into something at the gym when I haven't really worked up any amount of intensity yet.
Absolutely. And you wouldn't do that like if you wanted to go to the gym and like, let's say I want to be able to squat 100 pounds. And right now I can squat 15 pounds. I would not put 100 pounds on the barbell. That would be an insane thing for me to do out of the gate. If I can already lift 95 pounds, then maybe I could try one rep with 100 and then go back to my 95 until I feel like I can do 2 reps, 3 reps, 4 reps, and kind of not max that out all the time. It's not something I would do every day at the gym. I do maybe once a week or every other week. And I think that's so important to recognize with migraine too. Like you wouldn't just go to the gym and do 60 minutes of exercise or try to run a marathon when you're not even running 1 mile yet, right? So it's really important, just like we've been saying, to really scale that exactly to your needs. And high intensity looks different for everyone. I would never do a workout that like The Rock did. Like that would be crazy. His high intensity and my high intensity and your high intensity are all different.
I love that. Again, if you're joining us, I'm Adrienne DeLorco, the founder of Yoga for Migraine, and we're joined by our guest expert, Dr. Madison Oak, the vestibular doctor. And if you're joining us live, say hello in the comments, tell us where you're from, drop hashtag live, and if you're in the replay, share some love, hashtag replay. But I'm loving this conversation we're having about increasing physical activity. I think what also so many people with migraine struggle with is that consistency, because when if you're someone without any chronic pain conditions or major health conditions, what makes you progress physically is being able to show up at the gym every day and right, and that, like you mentioned, you're going to add
Mhm.
up and increase your intensity. But what so many of us struggle with is, maybe we get a good streak and we're feeling good for a while, and then migraine day like sets us back, and then we
Mhm.
feel like we're always, stepping to, one step forward, two steps back, and it can feel discouraging. And so what I want to bring back to that conversation is it doesn't even really matter at this point what you do physically, as
Mhm.
long as you do something every day. And
Yeah.
that consistency, that habit is going to give you the motivation, it's going to give you the encouragement, like, hey, yeah, I can keep this up, and allow you to have that progress. But if
Yeah.
you don't have to feel like, just because you were able to take a 30-minute walk yesterday and today you're not because you're having a high pain day, but maybe you take a walk around the block for 10 minutes.
Mhm.
That's
Awesome.
great. Keep it
That is
up.
amazing. Yeah. Even if
Yeah.
you don't get out of bed and you do something, you're like, okay, I have this habit every day at 10 a.m. I'm walking for 30 minutes. And you're like, gosh, it's 10 a.m. I'm having a really high pain day. What can you do instead of even needing to leave the house? Like if you can
Mm-hmm.
manage a 5, 10 minute walk outside, awesome. It might make you feel better. But if you can't, you're like, okay, can I do some like easy leg lifts in bed? Can I do some bridges on my bed? Can I do some ankle pumps? Can I just kind of move my shoulders a little bit and just be a little bit physical so that at 10 that day, you have done something physical. It doesn't break your habit. If you're a person who really needs to stick with a habit, especially to like keep that in motion, but also telling yourself that like, hey, I haven't failed today. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not bad because of this. I'm having a migraine attack today. I'm going to try to do my best. And that's all I can do. That's all anyone can do.
And what we're really talking about is kind of getting started. If you
Mhm.
feel like you haven't been consistent with exercise, or it's start and stop, or
Yeah.
you're not as in shape as you would like,
Hmm.
that's what we're kind of talking about with these baby steps, right? And creating those tiny habits. But thankfully, once you get through that first phase, that might maybe take you a month of like focus, doing a little bit each day. Not only will your habit start to solidify, but your migraine symptoms will also start to decrease, which will
Yep.
create this positive feedback loop so that you can do more intense physical activity.
Mhm.
Someone in the comments, Rissy, mentioned, we're not so much focused right now on burning calories and weight loss and things, but
Yeah.
that's will get you on that path so
Hmm.
that those things will start to, it's just like going to keep feeding itself. You're going to have less migraine attacks. You're going to start to, increase your physical activity, and you'll feel better about your body. But right now, we're just starting you to get into that
Yeah,
momentum, and that's the hardest part. What do you say,
definitely.
Madison, about when your clients are starting to build that exercise habit? How does that affect their lives, their migraine attacks?
Yeah, I think like speaking from the group every Friday, I ask for everyone's like wins of the week and what
Mm-hmm.
happened. And usually they're not like, I made it through a whole class. Usually it's something like this week, because I exercised, I was actually, and this is a very vestibular goal, but I was actually able to drive because I was able to exercise. I was able to sleep better, or
Mm-hmm.
I raised my threshold a little bit and I had to go to the airport and eat some airport food, and it had what's usually a trigger food for me and I didn't get triggered. So there are a lot of things that you can see that aren't like a typical exercise related that have a lot of benefits for people with migraine, that aren't like weight loss and being able to run a marathon. If that is a goal of yours, that's awesome. And that's something you could
Mm-hmm.
definitely work towards. But exercise for migraine has so many other benefits that
Mm.
aren't just weight loss and what have you, like the
Yeah, I
typical
love
run of the
that.
mill things.
Right. And just in terms of our migraine prevention, it is one of the top things that you can do that doesn't require medicine. In Beyond Migraine, my group coaching program, so much of what we do is built on this foundation of the seeds of migraine management,
Yeah.
which comes from Dr. Amal Starling, and it stands for sleep, eating, exercise, diary, and stress. And we happened to, at our last retreat migraine in Redondo Beach, I was going on a walk along the beach with the director of CHAMP, Kevin, and Dr. Bill Young, who's one of the directors of Miles for Migraine, prominent neurologist. And we were all kind of like chatting, like, what do you think is the most important of those acronyms? You know, is it sleep or exercise or diary? What the stress? And Dr. Young thought that exercise was really the leading one to focus on. Mine was sleep, but you know, it all works together. You know, in more exercise often increases sleep, and then when your sleep's better, you have more energy for exercise.
Yep.
All these things help to work together.
Yeah, it's definitely a cycle there for sure.
So let me squeeze in a few more questions, and
Do
I'm
it.
loving all these comments in the chat. So great to have so many people joining us today. Let's go talk to Maite. She has pain constantly due to chronic migraine and wants to do more exercise for neck and shoulders. She gets very tense there, feels like it's a trigger for migraine, but moving her head makes the pain worse, like neck circles or pendulum. Even walking makes her head pound. So how can she increase her mobility when she feels like she has so many limitations right now?
Yeah, so I was actually listening to the Heads Up podcast by the National Migraine Center about neck pain, and they cited a study in there, and I haven't read the whole study, but from what they cited, they say people who do exercises, and I'm not talking about physical therapy neck exercises, but I'm talking about like general neck exercises that aren't specifically tailored to you, can actually end up with more triggered migraine attacks than people who just left their neck still. Now so there are like some synapses and some connections in your brain, some neural pathways that can cause a lot of neck pain. I'm sure, as you know, as a person with migraine, while you have a migraine. So it's not just head pain, it's neck pain too. We know that for a fact. So actually increasing exercise that's comfortable can help kind of get us into that cycle. So if it's yoga and you just practice breathing and you use a lot of props and you do something comfortable, like a class with Adrian, I think that's a great way to start, because walking, it does require like a lot of up and down. It requires your feet to literally pound on the ground. If you can feel that in your head, we've all had head pain that you can feel when you walk, especially if you have migraine. So maybe that's not the right exercise for you to start with. Even when walking feels like, oh, I should just be able to walk. Like that should be simple enough. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you need to focus on breathing and maybe some core exercises and some gentle stretching before you can get into other exercise. So that is definitely a way to start, not a way to squat. But if other exercises, I don't know why I said squat, but if other exercises like squats don't make your head pound, start there. Do 5, do 10 heel raises on the wall, something like that. Do something really easy that doesn't make your head pound and is not an exercise for your neck, unless it's something your physical therapist gives you specifically.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear that. Now, for the clients that you work with, we talked about how one of the goals is to help increase, you know, the mobility of their head and be able to look up and down and side to side or even lay flat without triggering a dizzy spell. So is it something that you can do on your own, or how do you suggest people, you know, start to increase some more mobility in the neck and shoulders for vestibular people?
Definitely start really slowly, right? So if you're a person who you do this, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so dizzy, this is miserable. Don't start there. Start like this, like literally I barely moving my head. Start with like a 1 or 2 degree, very small nod. And if that doesn't make you dizzy, awesome. Do it a little bit bigger. The intention of vestibular exercises is to actually make you feel dizzy. So when I have meetings with patients, I basically like, okay, I'm going to make you dizzy for X amount of time. I don't want it to ever last over 5 minutes, and I don't ever want the dizziness to go a 5 over your baseline. So you're going to take whatever your symptoms are and make it a 0. So even if you're feeling like a 5 today, that's your new 0. You don't want to go 5 above that ever. Some people say 3. Some people say 5, and you never want it to last for more than 5-ish minutes. So if you've done 3 head turns and that set you off for the whole day, it's really important that you seek vestibular rehab therapy, which a lot of times can be done virtually if there's not someone in your area. And it's important to start even slower. Sometimes you need to start with tracking of your eyes like this. Like I'm not moving my head, I'm just moving my eyes before you start with head movements. And that's an okay place to start. I've started with plenty of patients and they are doing just fine. So start slow, start where you're at, and find help if you need it.
Oh, that's really good advice for people who want to increase their movement and have vestibular migraine. And that so much of what we do, whether it's helping people with head pain or dizziness, is actually kind of allowing ourselves to feel that discomfort, feel the dizziness, and desensitize ourselves a little bit. And yoga is also a great venue to do that because you're doing it in this safe place. You can be very mindful, you can breathe, you can watch your experience, and you're allowing yourself to sometimes work your edge, sometimes challenge yourself a little bit, knowing that you can pull back and knowing that whatever's happening, you're safe, like you're in full control. And just by doing those reps, it can really help with, I imagine, vestibular, but also head pain as well.
Absolutely. It's all about reps. Yeah.
And to put a plug in for yoga for migraine, in virtually every class I do, we do neck and shoulder stretches, as it is a place of tension for so many of us. So it is something that can also, yoga can help so many aspects of migraine, but specifically, helping people deal with that neck and shoulder tension, to just even do little breaks like we've talked about every hour at your desk. You can roll your shoulders back. You can, you can, look side to side. It doesn't have to be much, but those reps are what will help in the long run.
Absolutely. And I feel like if I can for 1 second. So
Please.
if you're in class with us, similar to you with like neck and shoulder stretches and all of that awesome stuff, I love it. We do the exact same thing. So like at the end of every class, there's always stretching involved. Depending on what we do, there's less neck stretches on leg day, but on like arm day and full body day, there's always like arm and shoulder things. And we're always cueing, especially throughout arm day, not to engage your neck like this. To try to keep that neutral position like you'd see in an anatomy textbook. So that's not like going forward like this, right? We're all sitting like this on our phones. We need to be up and comfortable, right? So
everyone's starting to sit up.
Sit up straight, roll your shoulders down and back. And if you're doing something overhead and all of a sudden your shoulders are up here by your ears and you're uncomfortable, that's when you either don't go so high or cue yourself to really relax that back down so you're not in an uncomfortable place. And that's really important.
Yeah, with both of what we do, just building that body awareness
Absolutely
is so essential for helping us understand our body and be able to tap into those little cues sooner so that you don't progress into a full-blown migraine attack, because you can notice like your shoulders getting tense. You can notice maybe your breath changing a little bit, and you can change things sooner just by having that deeper body awareness.
Absolutely.
So I love this question from Carrie. She wanted us to address how to know if you push too hard, because she feels like sometimes she might do a new exercise and it's unfamiliar, and then she feels like that kind of set her back and maybe triggered an attack. Any tips for Carrie on how to know how much to push or not?
Yeah. So just like we've been saying, start slow. And I think that if you want to push, like do it with one thing rather than the whole exercise routine. So if you're doing a leg day or a yoga class or something like that, and you're like, I want to go and do 3 sets of yoga, maybe do the first 2 sets that you've been doing for the sake of this example, and then do one of the exercises a third time. Right? If you're doing a class with me, maybe you do the first 2 rounds of whatever we're doing. And then the last round, you do just the 10 squats and then you stop the rest of them and see how you feel. Because I know a lot of times exercise really it can show up later in an attack. If you've triggered something, it's not always immediate. So instead of just being like, okay, I am not really sure what it was. Was it too many squats, or did I do too many head turns, or did I lay down for too long? Did I stand up too quickly in yoga? Who knows?
Right.
But if you
It
can
can be
do
so
just one
hard
of
to
them,
tell,
it's so hard
exactly.
to tell. So if you can do just one of those things and push yourself, and then see how you feel the next day, or when you normally would have noticed an attack, that kind of familiarity, I think, will really help.
Yeah. And another perspective is also if you are going to try something new or try to push your edge a little more, do it on a lower pain day.
Yes, 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 yes,
On a
absolutely.
lower pain day, like if you're not feeling many symptoms, like those are the good times to try to push yourself and
Yeah.
but yeah, it's really you want if you're looking for classes to join or how to even do this. Do I do it on my own? You
Mhm.
know, Madison has an amazing program, Vestibular Fit, and is doing she does it all like strength and cardio, but she gives tons of options and
Always
is
options.
doing
Yeah.
this at a pace that is really suitable for people with vestibular migraine.
Mhm.
Similarly, in my yoga for migraine classes, I'm all about options. We can do yoga in a chair, we do it with props, we give plenty of time to rest in between poses. So you want to find teachers that will give you lots of options, that it's not just like this way for 20
Yeah.
something year olds that are already fit, and that you can already give yourself a slower pace, and from there when like the pace is doable for you,
Mhm.
that's when you can increase more. You don't
Yes.
want to start something high and then always feel like, oh, I gotta like lower it,
Hmm.
and then you feel bad about yourself because you're never doing what the teacher's doing.
Yeah,
So just a little
absolutely.
perspective of what to look for when you're finding
Absolutely. Yeah.
exercise
Definitely
classes.
find someone familiar with migraine, with vestibular migraine,
Mm-hmm.
with vestibular disorders, with whatever kind of migraine you have, find someone familiar with it. And you can even email them and ask, like, I am always open to an email to see, like, is this right for me? And I've told people no, like, I don't think this is right for you. I think you need to do X, Y, or Z instead. And I think that's a really important thing to have someone who's even willing to be like, I will take your money, but I don't think you should. I
Right.
think that you should start somewhere else. And I think that's an
Mm-hmm.
important thing. And I think that's something that we
Yeah.
both do.
Right, and to
Well,
be
yeah.
able to reach out to your teacher personally is a
Hmm.
great asset for people who
Yeah.
have, we have like little things that we need help with, and sometimes just finding like a random class on YouTube might
Hmm.
not always be the right fit. Some days it might be fine, but it's great to have someone that can help guide you more personally to help you be more successful. So you're not just doing this on your own.
Totally agree.
All right, I'm going to wrap up with a couple questions because we could just keep talking, and I just
I could
love
talk to
this
you all day.
conversation. Yeah, I love this, and I'm hoping that lots of other folks are learning a lot as well.
Yeah, me
This is
too.
a yoga specific question I got from Sherry. She mentioned that sometimes she gets a migraine attack when she's doing poses
Mhm.
on the floor for a while, and the ones she mentioned were fish, um, bow pose, and sometimes bridge. So many of the ones she mentioned are ones that tend to put more pressure on the neck.
Mhm.
So that's something that I tend to not include in my yoga for migraine practices, or poses that put a lot of pressure on the neck. We do a lot of stretching, but not a lot of like kind of crunching up the neck like a fish pose where you're kind of laying back and your neck's back. Even a bridge pose where you're laying down and you lift your hips. For many people, just having your heart above your head is a migraine trigger. It
Mhm.
changes the blood flow a bit, but it is if you're not doing it in a safe way, it can and it can intensify the pressure on your neck. So those
Mhm.
are one. If you want to do those poses, reach out with a teacher that can help you do it
Yeah.
in the correct way. But two, there's so many yoga poses, and you don't have to do ones that don't feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. I really I feel you on that 100%. Like, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. You don't need to do it. There's no one saying that like this yoga pose is going to cure your migraine. It's not. So this amount of squats aren't going to cure your migraine, but it can really all help to reduce the symptoms or reduce attacks, raise your threshold when it's done in a comfortable way. So I really like your point that there's always another option.
Right. So I'm looking through our current comments. Okay, so Ricardo mentioned that he's got chronic vestibular, ongoing BPPV, and he was very athletic, used to do tons of sports until now, his symptoms are interfering. He's been walking the dog, doing some light weights, but he's still having some head pressure daily. He just asked any advice.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a hard thing to give specific advice, and of course none of this would be medical advice, but if exercise truly is like constantly triggering you, becoming really problematic, and you're just trying to go back to your old routine, something kind of that we've touched on before is starting really slowly and starting more slowly than you think you're going to need. And I think that is really my best advice for them. Sorry,
Right.
it's ongoing BPP and all those things. It's all really, really frustrating. Vestibular Group Fit really can help with that. There's lots of information in there about how to kind of deal with all of these things and how to scale exercise that you might want to be doing that's more intense, that is right for you, and to start more slowly than you think you're going to need to.
Love that. And it's so much about just giving ourselves that permission to not go full force or do what we used to do, and that mindset shift is so key. Cinda mentioned, I feel like I'm more sensitive to DOMs, which I'm not sure what that is. I don't know if that is vestibular
Delayed onset muscle soreness.
Okay. Any advice for recovering from this other than easing into it?
Ease into it, and then so some people take Advil afterwards, and that can actually decrease muscle building. So I recommend not doing that if you don't have to. And then eating enough protein and stretching, going on a walk instead of doing strength again. So do strength maybe on Monday, and maybe on Tuesday you have really bad DOMs. Try to go for that 10-minute walk. That can actually help kind of keep those muscles moving rather than staying still. And then if you find like a strength workout is usually what is giving you the DOMs, then I would recommend doing easing into it, but being sure you don't do it too frequently during the week until you can work up to that level.
All right. Well, I think we've covered all our fabulous questions, and I just loved our conversation, Madison. I'm so grateful that you could join us, and I will put Madison's link right now for her Vestibular Fit. You want to talk about that briefly before you leave us?
So Vestibular Group Fit is a group exercise class designed specifically for people with vestibular disorders and migraine in general. I know it's called vestibular, but you don't have to have vestibular migraine. Any kind of migraine would benefit from this. And it's basically just exercise that's completely tailored to you to strengthen your body, your vestibular system, and to increase your threshold and decrease the likelihood of triggering events and attacks. There's balance challenges, content that talk about like how to lay down flat without getting dizzy, how to practice mindfulness and breathing, how to deal with cervicogenic pain and dizziness and all those things twice a month. And then exercise classes are live 3 days a week and pre-recorded 3 times a month. So it's about 16 workouts a month. And it's all included in one subscription. It should be more affordable than your gym membership, and all is group classes tailored to you for $55. So that is Vestibular Group Fit. You can find out all about it on my Instagram, which is at the Vertigo Doctor, or my website, which is thevertigodoctor.com.
Yeah, and she has incredible value for everything that she's offering in this program. And if you deal with vestibular or not, or if you or migraine and you want to increase your physical activity, I highly recommend her program. And if yoga is more your style, I've dropped a few links for some of my programs, but my great introductory program is the Yoga for Migraine First Aid Kit, and that's a on-demand program where you can select yoga programs depending on your your pain level. So there's programs for high pain day, low pain day. If you want help sleeping, there's great guided meditations for that. And I also dropped a link for if you're just new and you want to just get those little 10-minute quickie movement practices in. My Yoga for Migraine sampler has 10-minute practices. So that's such a great resource. It's only $27, and just to help, like, get that habit.
That's such a good way to start. 10 minutes of yoga a day. Oh my gosh. I can't think of a better way to start, honestly.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Well, Madison,
Awesome.
I know we kept you for a while, but our conversation was hot and
I could talk to you all day.
So we are so grateful that you could be here. Thank you, everyone who joined us live and in the replay. And I'll see you next Wednesday for a more active Yoga for Migraine flow. So we'll see you then.
All right. See ya. Bye. Thanks so much for having me.